And good morning. My name is Bob Kobeck, and I'm hoping you already know that. And I'm here with Mr. Bruce Belfiore from Benchmark Portal, who I've known for quite a while and have worked with Benchmark Portal for many, many years. So the Benchmark Portal, I will tell you, is like all things contact center. If you need research or looking for research or training or certification or they're probably the smartest place to start, because if you do enough research, you're going to end up there anyway. Good morning, Bruce.
Good morning. How you doing, Bob?
I'm good, man. How are things in Santa Barbara?
Things are early here in Santa Barbara. I'm getting some light in here, but everyth's good. Everything's great. Thank you.
Good to be talking. We're getting a little taste of fall here in Indianapolis. So I mean, this morning it started out, it was 45 degrees.
Okay.
I'm not ready for the change yet.
No. In fact, we just stopped doing ocean swims here a week or so ago, and people already miss it. You know, we have something called Reef and Run, which is a lot of fun. But, you know, they're saying the water's starting to get colder. So even with the wetsuits, we've got to behave ourselves. And yeah, not doing that as much.
Gee, Bruce, you know, you're really hurting my heart, my friend. I'm so sorry to hear that you can't do ocean swims anymore. I'm lucky to get one time around the bathtub in my, in this climate. So Bruce, you're going to share some quite a few stats about what the heck is going on in the call center industry, particularly these days with, everybody talks about what's the impact of COVID and the impact of COVID, in the contact center industry has been kind of unique in how the contact industry, again, showed its resilience. I don't know how many hits this industry can take, but they continue to survive it. They continue to be resilient and even grow. So why don't I let you run through your presentation, and I may, interrupt from time to time with some questions if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Please join in on it. And actually, I'm going to pick up on something you just talked about, which is, the hits that this industry has taken and really has shown incredible resilience. We're about to issue a video for Customer Service Week, which is coming up in October, as you know. And one of the things I'll be talking about in that is the fact that this industry has been incredibly flexible and resilient. It's amazing what happened over the course of the last year and a half. And, I think we all should be very proud of how our industry has made a real contribution in a very difficult period of time. So here's one of the slides that comes from data that we collected through a survey. And we've done these surveys periodically. And this was, what impact has the pandemic had for your operation? And take a look at, Bob, those numbers there on the right-hand side. We changed our operations entirely. 1/4 had to change their operations entirely. And 35% had to change operations partially, but significantly on an ongoing basis. So the hit that you were talking about, Bob, really has been profound. It's been, very important for the industry, and it has an ongoing impact. So the idea of just going back to status quo ante and sort of saying, okay, pandemic's over, we're going to go back to the way things were, is going to be true for some, but it's not going to be true for a lot of people.
Now, Bruce, to be clear, this is your data. So when we talk about data being subject to interpretation, this is your data, and you're not interpreting at all. You're merely reporting the facts, correct?
Yeah. This came from a survey that we did of our database, and it also is pretty close to some data that we got several months earlier in the fall of 2020 when we did one with SOCAP. So yeah, it's really interesting to see it, and the resilience has been extraordinary, I think, in our industry.
Yeah,
so one of them. And one of the things was too is from order to implement it when the lockdown hit us was how many days? One of the questions that we asked. 6.4 days on average.
And that's fast.
That's incredible.
Do you think maybe that was the the technology that is used in contact centers these days? I mean,
Bob, one of the things that I say is that had this happened 20 years ago, we would not have been able to do this, because the kind of distributed in the cloud advanced technology that now exists and that allowed people to scale out and push people out of the centers wasn't available 20 years ago, and it is now. And so there were a lot of people who either weren't using that part of their capability in their technology, right? Or they were using it for maybe 10 or 15% of their agent population, but not for the rest. And they had to scale it all up, but at least it existed, right? And those who had some premise-based older legacy things and had to do something quick were able to turn to cloud providers and get it ramped up amazingly quickly. Obviously, those people were not up in 6.4 days, but they would have been on the higher side of the equation.
Well, when we first got into the survey business, we did it because we were working with a customer that needed feedback. And at the time we did it 15 years ago, I'm sorry, 12 years ago, actually. We mentioned to them that this is something that they could put as an internet solution. And we got a lot of blank stares even 12 years ago. So yeah, you mentioned 20 years ago this wouldn't happen. It may not have happened 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. 20 years ago, I don't know if you remember a company called Willow, that was trying to push things out to smaller centers in Florida and places like that. But the kind of at-home capabilities that we have today didn't exist that long ago. And we're, if this had to happen for our industry, it was good that we had this technology. It was fortunate that we had this technology to be able to handle it. So yeah, pretty cool. Now, just to go back to what we were talking about, we asked what the percentage of people were at-home workers before the pandemic, and the average came out to about 9%. Okay, so at-home workers were being used by a lot of centers. Oftentimes, it was one of those things that was a reward for people who did really well and had certain family situations, or in certain cases where somebody had to move away for family reasons, but wanted to continue to work even though they were beyond commuting distance, that sort of thing. And so it was the exception instead of the rule. Then what happened when everybody said, clear it all out, the health authorities said, we have to shut this down. This is, as of earlier this year, 85.4%. So, in many cases, 100% or very high percentages were pushed out to at-home status. And again, on an average, 6 to 7 days. Unbelievable, Bob. Really.
How many of those employers at one time or another in their business life made the statement, I will have at-home workers over my dead body?
Exactly. That was the case. Oh, we heard all the time. You're absolutely right. And but when the authorities say you have to do it, then you have to do it. And obviously, it's the best thing for your people anyway. So they didn't want to have other dead bodies, that's for sure. They wanted to have healthy workers. And so this is what happened. And it's pretty extraordinary, very extraordinary.
That's great information.
Now, this is also interesting. In other words, what percentage of your people do you expect to be at-home workers at year-end 2021? Okay, so this is from several months ago, but this is for few months hence. And at the time, people were saying about 63%. So going from the 9% level up to the 80+ level, but still having over 3/5 of their people working at home was the expectation. So this is very fluid. These things are changing all the time. These variants are throwing the chinks into the works in some cases, but you can see that that's a significant difference in the way we work, and obviously has an impact also on the way we recruit and the way we onboard and all of those things.
Oh, and retention. I mean, you run the risk of losing a lot of people if you start to tell them they need to come back into the office.
Yeah.
And right now, I mean, retention has always been a big issue in the contact center industry anyway. And I would imagine this can exacerbate it a little bit.
Yes. No, absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And actually, the question was asked, what was your remote worker attrition like? And only 15% said it was higher than before the pandemic. 53% said it was the same, and 33% said it was lower than before the pandemic.
Wow, that's great.
Isn't that good? And
that's great information. Yeah.
One of the things that came through was that there were a lot of agents and workers in general who were pretty darn impressed at the end of the day how well their employers managed the changeover and how well they were treated during that period of time. And there was a recognition that those managers were under a lot of pressure. They were treading in water that they'd never been in before. And, we talked to a lot of managers who said, I'm exhausted at this point, but I'm more in contact with my people than I have ever been before. And they're remote, that's so they just really were working hard to make sure that people felt continuing connection, despite the fact that there was this pandemic.
And Bruce, we just published a white paper that showed the 4 reasons for turnover, and the number one reason, you think money, but it's never been money. But the number one reason in the latest study that we just did showed that the number one reason people leave was because they were not accessible to their immediate supervisor, or rather the supervisor was not accessible to them. So in the case of the contact center industry, it shows you again the resilience and the importance of that accessibility.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Bob, if you go back into studies that we've done over the years, because one of the things we do when we do assessments is to survey agents. And so with that, we get a lot of good data points, and we published 2 reports that are called agent voices, because everybody talks about the voice of the customer. So we decided to say, let's publish something on the voice of the agent. So it's an agent voices report. And, one of the things that came through loud and clear is that the relationship between agents and supervisors is key. It is absolutely very, very important.
Always has been. Yeah. Always.
And the thing that's a little bit disturbing is the fairly low level of specialized training that's given to supervisors. In other words, there's often a lot of people who say, okay, this is a person who's really good as an agent, seems to have a good personality, we'll make them a supervisor. And without saying, there's training that should go along with that. And one of the things that
training on how to be a supervisor.
How to be a supervisor, how to do that function well. Just because you do another function well doesn't mean that you're really good as a supervisor. So, this is something that, we've seen has gotten more attention. And as a result, too, we've got the, as you know, on-demand supervisor training course that's been very, very popular during this period of time, because it does give that kind of training on an on-demand format. So for managers who have, tons of stuff that they have to do, they're able to rely on that to give the skills and the open the eyes type of thing that oftentimes supervisors need.
How many times have we heard the story, Bruce, that, and we hear that people will use different words, but the story is the same, that I took my top producer, made him a manager, my sales went down, and I fired the manager. And it goes back to a couple of things. 1, training. 2, Just because they're a top producer does not mean they're a leader. I, for example, own my own company. I would be a terrible supervisor. I know I am. That's why I don't supervise. So, and I haven't had that training, to your point.
Yeah, that's right. No, the whole servant leadership thing, and just understanding what it is that motivates people and coaching, right? I mean, supervisors, I've often said, we should change the name of supervisor to agent advocate, right? To advocate for the agent's success. Because if the agent is successful, then the company's going to be successful and the customers are going to be happy. And so, shouldn't we change the name from supervisor to agent advocate? But yeah, I mean, all those things are concepts and things that can be trained and can help to open eyes and to really change lives at the end of the day, because they do. These supervisors are changing lives of their agents all the time.
Well, and the entire dynamic of a call center.
Exactly.
Back to the retention. I mean, supervisors are the first line of defense against somebody leaving.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
Good points.
Yeah, you got it. No, and then in fact, oftentimes that's the canary in the coal mine, right? When things are going downhill, you start seeing people's satisfaction going down, and then they start leaving. And oftentimes, by the time people realize what's going on, it's a little bit late. And whereas it all could have been prevented with the proper amount of training ahead of time. You want to set people up for success. You don't want to set them up for failure. So,
and oftentimes we know too that the story, part of the story also is they don't necessarily leave our industry. They leave that call center, but they might likely go to another call center. One of these days, I think I'd like to get in cahoots with you and use our survey platform to do a study to find out what happens to agents when they leave.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, if we can find some way of tracking, that would be great. Yeah, maybe we could have a tag put on them as they leave or something. Figure out where they go.
Well, if they get vaccinated, they've got a chip inserted in them anyway.
Yeah, you got that. Exactly. So we'll just get the access to those chips and we'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll call Bill Gates. He's doing it.
Yeah, call Uncle Bill there. Yeah. Well, here's another one where your top challenges as a result of the pandemic, and people were allowed to pick 3, and I think that first one, the finding and screening applicants, has grown in the meantime. I think that's now, if we were to do this today, I think that would be a higher percentage right there. Training and acculturation, I mean, that's to be expected when people are not coming into a center, they're not having sort of face-to-face, eye-to-eye contact, etc. That's the training and the acculturation is tougher. And this is what we're talking to more clients about too, is, do you need to rethink your training and how it's done because it's being done remotely? And the acculturation part too, how is it that you can give people the same sense of how the culture and the importance of your company and your center is when they're not coming in. And, one of the ways is through videos. And that's what we're encouraging people to do, to give a sense of the history and the culture, et cetera. And we're available to actually help out with that sort of thing. Communication. Yeah, go ahead.
Bruce, that pardon my interruption, that in here, and maybe you didn't ask the question, but in here, one of the things that we found and reported in our white paper was the second most significant reason for people to leave is because they didn't see a path to the future. Yeah. There was no career ladder. Yeah,
which has been a problem, right, in the contact center business for a long time because of the relatively flat hierarchy in call centers. Of course, this changes, as you know, if you're in certain industries, certain companies where you can make a lateral move. Let's take life insurance, property and casualty, where oftentimes the center or the company will have a policy of bringing in people to the contact center first. It's a great way of acculturating them, a great way of getting them to understand the products, and a great way of getting them to have sensitivity toward the customer, because they're actually on the front line with them, right? They don't start out in some back office saying, oh, customer, we don't care about them, right? They have a real sense of the customer. And then you can move from the call center to a whole bunch of different levels inside of the insurance company. But there are other companies where that's not the case, where the call center is, pretty far away distance-wise from other functions of the company, and it's a flatter organization, and leading to the problem that you were just talking about.
In this latest pandemic, the one of the areas that had the biggest hit in terms of having to furlough or get rid of people is that mid-level manager that was working in the back office, that back office person. And anecdotally, one of the things that I was hearing from my clients was that a lot of those back office people, director level, even at some points VP level, that got shoved aside, went back into that same company and went on back to the phone and started on the phone, which then meant that they were going to get some fast promotion. Now, they may not ever end up back at the level where they were, but there is a ladder for them.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. That'll be interesting to sort of study that phenomenon too.
Staying with the company, but
Yeah.
go to the phone room.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, yeah, so I think people have probably been able to read the others here by this time, so we don't really need to go through each one of them. I know that one of the people I worked with on this wanted definitely that one on the right there, the back office fulfillment issues. That is very important to, a lot of operations, and people just weren't allowed into the office. So how do you do this stuff back in the dark days of the worst part of the pandemic? But, by this time, people have figured that out. And, if they had higher turnover, this is actually a question that has to do with higher turnover. And what did people attribute that to? And one of them was less feeling of connection to the company since workers are remote, but that, wasn't as big as I thought it was going to be. Greater family demands, obviously, with the whole school situation, and the working population in contact centers includes so many parents of school-age kids. That would be a big deal. Also, if they have older parents as well, older people that they have to take care of. And, in some cases, the response was, well, we think that government subsidies made unemployment attractive for some, and then other was 38.5%.
Do we think, Bruce, that with the government subsidies ending the way they are, is that going to help bring those people back to work?
I think that's the presumption, and we'll find out whether that's true or not.
Yeah.
We'll just have to see. And also the fact that school started again too. I mean, there's a conjunction here of subsidies ending, school starting, so that in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, that you have children going back to school. So it's going to be interesting to see how these stats evolve over time. And in those cases where people actually had lower attrition, lack of employment alternatives due to the pandemic, because obviously there was a period of time before the economy got going again where there wasn't much else. Improvement in our staff retention efforts. That's only a third, but that's still a third, where they felt that they had made a real effort and those efforts were paying off, to points that you were talking about, Bob.
That I know you're going to get to the employee appreciation for convenience of remote work, but I see the direct relationship between that one and the lack of employment alternatives.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's right. Yeah, so the employee appreciation for convenience of remote work. There are a lot of people who found, hey, this is pretty good. This remote work business, and I can do this, and I can do this well. And obviously, there's been real help to people in situations where the kids were home, other family members may have needed some help, and also, just being able to focus on the job and clicking in, not worrying about a commute, paying for gas, doing all of that kind of stuff, was, in many cases liberating for a lot of people.
Childcare. I mean, yeah.
So, and so with regard to the remote workers, which I know is an area that you were particularly interested in us talking about, we've instituted new practices for remote workers regarding onboarding formalities. This, I think, is really important. Okay, so this has to do with the acculturation thing too, which is the next one, greater use of videos to introduce the company and promote acculturation. Notice that those two are pretty close together in terms of how many. And I think that people have said, okay, we have to rethink. Onboarding is different if people aren't walking through the door, right? I remember one center where they were having some culture issues, and I asked the center manager to please plop himself at the front door for the next 2 weeks and greet everybody as they came in and get to know everybody's name. And he did. And it really made a big difference in terms of the acculturation and the satisfaction of the employees. They were really impressed by this. But you can't do that, obviously. You have to find other ways of doing that. And so, obviously that's been taken to heart. Fostering the communications between agents and supervisors, which means to encourage it, but also to help people understand how to do it well. And fostering communications and morale in other ways, through things like gamification, through, special events, that kind of thing. Increased emphasis on remote coaching. So again, coaching is different if it's remote than if it's in person, right, Bob? And, you have to be able to figure out how to do that properly.
What you got to figure out how to do it on Zoom because, if you're coaching, you want to have that group coach meeting also.
Right. Yeah. And, I think that part of it, the Zoom culture and everything, it's two-dimensional, right? So one of the things that good leadership does is to punch through a third dimension to their personality and communicating with their colleagues so that it becomes a little bit more of a three-dimensional experience through the force of energy and enthusiasm and just good advice and coaching from whoever the coach, supervisor, manager is to the subordinate. And so I think leadership has also evolved, has had to evolve because of this. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, and I will say too, I'm kind of an outgoing guy. There's no secret.
Absolutely.
Right. But it took me a while to get used to the camera. As I was getting used to the camera, it dawned on me that you can get used to the camera and talking to people and rousing people and rah people if you leave the camera on all the time. So you're always looking at yourself, much like in the old days when it was recommended that I'm going to put a mirror in front of you because come hell or high water, I'm going to animate you when you're on the phone. Mm-hmm. And the best way to do that is to stick a mirror in front of you so you can see what you look like. If you like what you look like on the phone, then you're going to like what you sound like, and your customers are going to like what you sound like. So in those Zoom meetings, rah, wake up, let's go get a call center. The camera, it can be a deterrent if it's not used properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's a different place. It's a different venue. It's a different
medium.
Yeah, it's a different medium. And, I think when you went to Washington, D.C., right, earlier in your career, you were on a different stage, right? It was different from being in Indiana. And so you, I'm sure, had to learn different ways to project, to communicate, to, right, to do all those sorts of things. And it's the same thing, different parts of your career, different parts of your life.
Yeah, interestingly enough, Bruce, I had to unlearn it when I moved back to Indiana.
You had to what?
Unlearn it.
Unlearn.
Atomic fever is real. I will tell you, it is very real. I experienced it. I know that, and it was a different transition, both
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, those transitions are good because you learn from everything. So that's
Yeah,
a good
just add it to my personality.
add it to your personality. Well, you know, even better and better, right? So here's a couple. Do we have much more time, or
We want to start thinking about moving toward talking about something that I know is near and dear to your heart. But you go ahead.
absolutely. Okay. Well, here, which of the best following best describes your situation? They're going to, you know, keeping remote workers remote until there's a reliable vaccine. Again, this was a while ago. Advantages of cost, rotate workers between home and office. These are things that are still being talked about. And with regard to the charity of choice, Bob, does everyone know about your program here, which I think is a wonderful thing that you're doing? But
Yeah, let me sort of frame it so that we can talk about it. In each podcast, we feature a charity of choice of the guest. It's our way of giving back and thanking people like Bruce for spending their time to educate people and educate us on, you know, just the what's up, what's going on in the world and universe. And so with the charity of choice, I love to feature the charity of choice of the guest. And for what it's worth, I'm usually the one that contributes the first $50 to the charity, which I will do here. So Bruce, let's take a minute and talk about this charity of choice. And it, you know, it's always going to be near and dear to my heart. So go for it.
okay, well, I'm going to talk about Direct Relief, which is based here in Santa Barbara, California, and has grown like topsy because of the fact that there's been so much need for what they do around the world. And, you know, I put them in the same category with an organization like Catholic Relief Services, which has done unbelievable work all over the world. And, you know, would have been another one of my charities of choice, and one that I'd highly recommend. I mean, and in terms of the efficiency, you know, the efficiency that is oftentimes rated by those organizations that rate nonprofits, both of these very, very highly rated. Well, Direct Relief happens to be in Santa Barbara. I have actually visited their center. I'm part of Rotary, and as a Rotarian, we went to the Direct Relief Center to see it and got a very nice tour of their facilities. And they're involved in humanitarian relief all over the world. They equip doctors, nurses, as it says, with life-saving medical resources. They send food, you know, pop-up shelter, and medication to the world's most vulnerable in an incredibly efficient and admirable way. So over 80 countries, 50 US states. So it's not just in overseas. They also are sending supplies to the Texas coast when hurricanes come in, to Louisiana, same thing. Wherever there is a disaster, they are well organized to get people and supplies there, and they partner with local folks in order to get stuff distributed. So
I would imagine, Bruce, that with today's environment, with so many more fires and floods occurring globally, that the need is growing pretty rapidly.
it is. It is. So thank you very much, Bob. I think this is a great charity of choice program that you have for the Bobcast, and really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to highlight Direct Relief.
And you wouldn't happen to know the URL, would you? So that we can donate?
Yeah, I mean, I do somewhere, but if you
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll find it, I'll get it, and I'll make sure it gets posted when we put this podcast up.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And you know what?
You
can always ask the Google machine.
Yes. Yeah, Google definitely will have it. Direct Relief, based in Santa Barbara, California. So,
you know, they're going to get $50 today. So, you know, I wish I could do more, but man, oh man, we give to every charity that we can. We're very generous and intend to stay that way. So hopefully anybody that looks at this, hears this, will be equally as generous. Bruce, what else do we have to talk about, my friend?
I think we've covered quite a bit of territory. How about yourself? Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Well, I'm as you know, I'm a big fan of Benchmark Portal. I think you know that. And if you don't, you should. So just know that I'm a big fan of Benchmark Portal. But you know, one thing that I think that a lot of people don't understand is what do you mean by benchmark? And this study that you just showed us is one of those things that you can use to benchmark several different places inside your call center for improvement in what you're doing. So I think it's important. Why don't you just define Benchmark Portal?
Sure. Okay. So Benchmark Portal, we actually started at Purdue University as a student project back in 1995. So a long time ago. The very first benchmarking for customer contact centers or call centers really ever done. And it became such a hit that it grew, moved off campus. And people started saying, okay, you've shown me my benchmarking report, which shows my metrics, you know, average speed of answer, average talk time, first call resolution, all of those things, side by side with the average for my industry. And we have over 40 industry verticals, so it's very apples to apples. Thank you for that. Now I can see where I'm really good and where I really stink. What should I do about the areas where I'm really stink, where I need to do something? And so that has pushed us into other areas. One of the biggest areas of need has been certified training for contact center professionals at all levels, for QA, for workforce management, for supervisors, and for agents. And we have courses for all of those levels so as to make the performance of the center better. We also
and they get the Benchmark Portal seal of good approval, right? Housekeeping seal.
Yes, that's right. You get certified as an individual professional. And then on top of that, we have a center certification program, okay, which is separate. And the center certification program basically looks at all of the metrics and says, are you in the upper quartile of a 4-quadrant matrix that we have that shows that you have superior performance on both the quality of what you do and the costs of what you do. So you have very high quality while keeping costs in line. And if you get in that upper right-hand quadrant, then you can be certified as a Center of Excellence. And our Center of Excellence program has been going for about 20 years now. And there's some folks who just do it year after year, learn something every year so as to get better, and can be certified if they have the numbers to do it. And then we also do general consulting. So people who have problems with their IVR or anything else really in the call center, we can help out with. And then we do research, which we enjoy doing a lot. So those are the things that Benchmark Portal is up to. And we are currently launching something called iBenchmark, which is automated benchmarking. So it makes benchmarking easier because feeding all of that data through from the ACD to us, instead of having to actually go through all of your reports and pull out those metrics in the form we need them, we can have that stuff go directly from the ACD to us. So, and that way benchmarking isn't just a once-a-year report card, it's an ongoing management tool that can be really powerful in terms of helping you to have the best performance possible. The nice thing, Bob,
you just gave me a great idea, Bruce, that you and I can talk about offline, about how we can use our metrics also, because we measure key performance indicators that are different than yours.
Sure, be happy to do that. Be happy to.
All right.
Okay.
Well, Bruce, I hope you have a really wonderful weekend. I'm sure you will, and hope you have a wonderful day, week, month, life. I'm sure we'll be bumping into each other at one of the shows that are coming up, PACE or SOCAP or someplace. Yep. In the meantime, enjoy California, my friend. I'm jealous you're there, but then again, it is a gorgeous state, Indiana. So yes, thank you, Bruce. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Bob. Really appreciate it.